of people think that cannabis is just for smoking, but when they hear this song, they'll learn there's more to toking. 25,000 different things we can make from it, and if we give it a chance, we'll save the blinking planet. Food, fuel and medicine, necessities for life, a benefit to all of us, a wonder and delight. Within this smelly weed, there's more than meets the eye, so much, much more than smoking, it can cleanse our dirty skies. Cannabis, cannabis, we'll save the planet with cannabis. Cannabis, cannabis is a very useful weed. Cannabis, cannabis, we'll save the planet with cannabis. Cannabis, cannabis is very good indeed.
Good evening, Hemp Works from Hastings on Time for Hemp Global International Fantastic and Skint Network, and tonight I've got Steve Allin. Steve Allin is brilliant. Steve, you're brilliant. I just want to say there's a few books in my life that are Bibles to me. One, of course, is The Emperor Wears No Clothes by the great Jack, and the other one, I do love Chris Conrad's book, Lifelines to a Future. I've got a few techie books about the growing and the agriculture that most probably nobody's ever seen before, and the other one is Building with Hemp by a guy called Steve Allin, and that is you.
That's me.
Well done, sir. I've been waiting to talk to you for years. People that don't know, Steve Allin builds the most amazing buildings from basically cannabis crops, yeah, and Steve will explain to you now how you do that. Hiya, Steve. Thanks for coming online with us. So, Steve, your show, mate, take it away.
Okay, well, to tell you about how we build with hemp, we can use two parts of the plant. We can use the fibres to replace fiberglass or rockwool insulation, and we can use the wood chips from the centre of the core to mix with binders to make what we call hempcrete. And hempcrete is usually combined with a lime-based binder, and we add things to that lime to make it set quicker and a bit harder to make it suitable for the building site. It's a technology that's evolved in the 1980s by a French man called Charles Rossetti, and he used it initially to repair an old medieval building, and it was soon realised this material had great qualities of control of the atmosphere, of humidity and temperature, and that it could be used to build new houses. And so I was one of the early people who went to France and took that technology out into the world after trying it on my own house as I was in the middle of building it, and I used it as a plaster, which is used by mixing the shies or herds, as we call them, with a greater amount of binder to make it a smooth paste, or it can be then tamped into a shuttered system around a framework to create a wall, and that wall is insulating and heat storing and handles moisture, and so it's always warm inside the building. It's never cold. You don't need to heat it or cool it, and it regulates the moisture so it's healthy to live in. You might ask, why do we need a new material made from hemp, or a new hemp building material? The reason is we've been using materials that have increasingly emitted more and more CO2 and are more and more inappropriate for living within. So we get situations where in buildings we get sick building syndrome, where there's too much moisture and mold on the walls. And this is because the buildings are only resisting moisture, they're not really working with moisture. And so we're trying to work with nature, and as with many of the other aspects of hemp, it produces very healthy products. And so we cast or pack this material down between boards around a framework to give it the vertical stress structure so it can hold up the weight above it. And we can also cast it around in the roof, the walls, and then the floor, around any kind of structure, really. The materials are being developed to make it more load-bearing, and there are blocks made in Spain which include clay in the mix, and they're used structurally so they can hold up floors and roofs. And they're also tested under fire conditions, which is another aspect of hempcrete, and it's fireproof. So those elements have made it become a subject of great interest in the last few years, and as things are starting to open up with the hemp world around all the countries that have the ability to grow, and everybody that's looking into sustainable solutions for what we need to do on the planet, They're identifying hemp as, of course, this wonderful tool that we all know it to be, and one of those uses is building.
Steve, coming from the novice perspective, there's a couple of things I've heard about hempcrete, which maybe you can either dispute or verify.
Okay.
One, it gets older with age.
Yeah, harder with age, you could say.
Harder with age. Okay.
Yeah. No, it does get older with age.
So is that what I said? Older with age. It does get older with age. Oh, I'm sorry.
It does, yeah, because and that's all down to the way that lime works, really. Lime is a material that, unlike cement, which when you add water to it, it sets chemically. Lime can have those qualities of setting when you add water, but most lime that is manufactured and is used in building sets very slowly by the absorption of CO2. Now, when lime is manufactured, the limestone, which is made from shells compressed over millions of years, is burnt and CO2 is released. Now, that's not good. But in the process of making it into a material we can use, we burn it. It then becomes calcium oxide, or quicklime, as some people call it. And that material just looks like burnt rocks. But when you add water to it, it gives off an incredible amount of heat. In fact, almost as much heat as it was put into it to burn it in the first place, which is another outstanding ability of this material. Then once it's wet, it's gone through this wetting and heating process. It's called calcium hydrate, and that's the material we tend to use for building. We add water to it to make it a mixture that we can put somewhere, like as a plaster on a wall or as a wall as a wall itself. And as the material dries out, it reabsorbs CO2, and it does that continuously for anything up to 100 years. So it's reabsorbing back the CO2 that it released when you burnt it, and it then becomes calcium carbonate again, which was the material that it started off as limestone, and as the shells of the animals that died that left their bodies to mineralogy and geology in the form of limestone.
I have heard
this aging process happens through the reabsorption of carbon dioxide.
I have heard as well that lime is most probably about the 5th most abundant substance on the planet. It's sort of everywhere.
Yeah, that's a difficult statistic to quantify or to quantify, but all I'd say is that, all I know is that about 4% of the Earth's crust is made from limestone.
So we've got plenty of limestone.
Yeah, there's plenty of limestone around.
There's plenty of limestone.
Most countries do manufacture lime, or their neighbours do.
Cool. So if we can grow hemp pretty much anywhere, and we have the availability of the lime, you have basically, and then with the water, you've got the 3 elements for constructing a building.
The main elements. The main difference.
The 3 main elements.
That's the 3 main elements. Although we would like to move towards even more sustainable materials like clay, which of course is well known as a building material around the world. In fact, most houses in the world are built with clay or earth. But the thing is that we're in the modern world, and most people on the planet, whether they live in a shanty town in South Africa, or whether they live in a council estate in Britain, or they live in a fairly big family house in America, they expect something that's better and more modern if they're going to have a new building, or if they're going to think about a new way of building houses. And so we need to find something that is acceptable to the modern market. In other words, it's got to provide a fairly flat, smooth wall. It's got to be something you can fix into. You can hang a picture on the wall, or you can hang shelving or fix shelving to it. And so something that's a product that can provide a house that people can buy and sell without thinking, oh my God, I bought this hemp house, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to sell it because it's a hemp house. There's no particular look to a hemp house. A hemp house can look like anything. It can look like the most modern house in the world, or a very handmade house, as you'll see in my book and the illustrations. And it can provide a very ecological solution to the existing housing market. Now that it not only means the housing market in the Western world, America and Canada and Europe, etc., but also when we're thinking about building houses for disadvantaged people in developing countries, as the several projects that I'm involved in at the moment, that when you're trying to rebuild the townships, you're trying to do many things. We're trying to establish a skill base to be able to do that work when you're gone, when you've stopped advising them. You're expecting to be able to build houses, or the local population can build houses that they will be proud of and that will be really comfortable to live in, and they'll want to live in them.
So just coming back to being the novice again, water's legal, the lime is legal, so the only problem you've got is with your third element, which is basically the cannabis plant or the hemp plant, whichever.
Right, well, you see, when we're talking about building with hemp, we are really talking about industrial hemp, and even though you can produce wood chips from flower crops or from some seed crops, but the main source of those industrial hemp wood chips would be an industrial hemp industry. Now, obviously, unless you've got a hemp industry or hemp production of some sort nearby, building with hemp is not going to be an immediate possibility. But I've been going all over the world in the last few years teaching people to build with hemp. I was in Australia shortly after they'd initialised hemp production there. I was in the United States before we ever had any hemp production, although we did actually have to process hemp there on the site because the hemp material that was imported from Canada to do the course with was so bad condition. In fact, it was basically just shredded plant, leaf, seed, stalks, the lot. So we had to actually set up a sort of sieving and separating process there under the shelter of a gazebo tent in order to have material to work with. In fact, CBS came and did a news package about it, which you can probably find in their archive somewhere, on CBS Minneapolis TV. And they came and they filmed us not only doing some hempcrete tamping into the framework and talking to the various people that were at course, but they also filmed the fellas actually processing the hemp. Unbeknownst to them, they were actually criminals they were filming because there was a lot of leaf matter in the material. It would never normally have been allowed into the States. And of course, it was full of viable seed, which was also illegal, and it was sprouting just a few days later because of torrential rain.
Oh.
So,
actually, I do laugh, but that could have been quite serious, couldn't it? Because
it could have been. Yep.
It could have. Yeah.
Fortunately, the fellows from CBS News were caught up in the whole positive news story, the possibility of actually presenting a news package that, even though it had a very small trivialization of the marijuana issue right at the beginning of it, they got that out of the way very quickly in just one or two sentences, and were into this really positive news story where they were, overawed with the possibilities of this material from employment and energy saving, etc. And so many of the hemp activists that were on the course with me at the time were actually blown away. Dr. David West, Johnny Virchow, people like that, because it was the first real positive news story that mainstream television had ever put on television. So this activity that's happening around the world of me going and teaching hemp building courses in Sweden, in Finland, in Canada, is identifying this new way to build. It either becomes the reason to use or an ability to use the material that's already being produced, or it becomes a help in persuading and promoting the idea to local authorities and local governments in order to start establishing that.
I must admit, I was very lucky back in the day when Ralph Carpenter brought the stuff over from France. I'm not so sure. Maybe I think this is how the story went. But Ralph Carpenter was one of the first people as well to bring the ensemble over, and he built the 4 houses for Brie up in Haverhill, and 2 were conventional sort of brick concrete buildings, and 2 of them were the hempcrete buildings. And I remember going up there when they were finished, and from the outside you couldn't really tell the difference.
Well, that's quite true in as much as the hemp houses are plastered and painted a sort of yellow colour, and the brick houses, as far as I know, are still brick. But it was I think it was a housing block of about maybe 20-odd houses, but 4 of them were chosen to do a test with, and 2 of them, as you say, were hempcrete, and 2 of them were the conventional sort. Ralph came and gave a presentation a few years after that at my symposium in Ireland, the first international hemp building symposium we held, which the IHBA, or the International Hemp Building Association, was formed just after that. He's a man who's particularly individual in his approach to building. He works very much with local councils and works a lot with heritage projects, and so he was able to basically persuade them this was basically a traditional type material, although it wasn't exactly.
I do believe as well that it passed all its building regs, didn't it, at the time?
What it's done is it's surpassed the expectations in as much as it was built probably just below what would be the optimum thickness of the wall, and it performed slightly better than the conventional building beside it. Now, if it had been built with just the walls a couple of inches thicker, it would have outperformed the other building quite considerably. But those were buildings that were built right at the very beginning of understanding of many aspects of ecological building, and they probably could have been improved in a lot of ways in hindsight, and so the results would have even been better. But there have been many, many, many houses built in England since then.
Absolutely.
Especially by a man called Ian Pritchett and his partner Mark Patton, who used to work for Lime Technology, who've now left there. But those guys are doing the most amazing projects. They were the guys that did the Adams Brewery and the Wine Society.
They've done the brewery. Isn't that fantastic? I must go there one day. That brewery looks unbelievable.
How the hempcrete material can save a lot of money. Now, people always ask me, well, how much does it cost to build with hemp? Well, it all depends on the design of the building and how well trained your workers are and how used they are to the material, etc., etc. But when it comes to the savings, which is obviously part of the total cost of a building in the longer term, those buildings are saving their owners about £40,000 or £50,000 a year in heating and cooling costs.
That's a tremendous amount of money.
Spencer's are finding the same thing about their large shopping block in Cheshire Oaks up in Ellesmere Port.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
In Marks and Spencer's.
Marks and Spencer's? What? The British have a hemp supermarket?
They have a huge shopping centre, shopping area or shopping facility outlet in a place called Cheshire Oaks in Ellesmere Port. And that has the same technology as the Wine Society warehouse in the north of London, where they've put wooden frames filled with hempcrete and hemp fibre insulation on the outside of a steel building to create that hempcrete envelope to enable the temperature to stay constant inside, for the atmosphere to be healthy and the moisture controlled in a way that's healthy to be in it, and it's saving them a huge amount of money as well.
Jesus. Well, I don't use supermarkets. I'm a bit of a raw food juicer myself, but I must admit, if I lived up there, I would go visit the supermarket to get my bananas just because it's made out of hemp. How fantastic.
It's an amazing building. It's a really huge building, and it's just a very nicely designed building in the first place. But there are other interesting large-scale industrial projects that are being used with hemp. There's the British Science Museum.
Steve, I've got to hold you there. We've got to cut into a break now. We're 25 past. Believe it or not, the first segment's already gone because this is just amazing. Right, we're going to play a little bit of music. Me and you can talk to each other while we're playing the adverts and the bills. So take it away, please, Casper. Wow.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
I don't know about you, but when I cultivate my clones, I want to give each and every one the best chance to grow into a mature, healthy plant. But after a few cloning cycles, I experienced decreased root density, slimy stems, or even worse, no roots at all. Growers know that reusing cloning collars results in failed clones. And cleaning cloning collars between grow cycles requires extra work and decreases root density. That's why I use PermaClone. PermaClone collars have been engineered to prevent failed clones by providing heat-sterilizable collars which fit easy clone, turbo clone, or power cloner systems. Permaclone collars can be dry heat sterilized, pressure cooked, or autoclaved to completely kill all bacteria and fungi without harsh chemicals. Start cloning with confidence today and visit us at permaclone.com. Put in the code T for hemp with your order and receive a 10% discount on your purchase.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light. That makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com. Or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
Have you ever had a problem with overcooking your cannabis oil? You probably wanted to rip your hair out when you burned off all the THC, right? I even cried one time when my brownies failed to make a good impression at the party. Well, I stopped crying when I found Magical Butter. Magical Butter is a device with a microprocessor-controlled program sequencer. It was designed by a scientist and a chemist to precisely extract the benefits of various herbs. Magical Butter easily makes botanical butter, oils, tinctures, lotions, sauces, and more. Magical Butter heats your oil and your herbs at the perfect temperature every time. Check us out at magicalbutter.com because it's magical. Okay, there's a lot of science and chemistry involved, but it sure works like magic.
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.
Cannabis is very good indeed.
That's it, we're back. Right, hemp works. Yes, it does. We know that. Steve Allin knows that. Casper knows that. And this is time for hemp. And this really is one of the best times in the 21 years that I've been involved that the hemp industry and cannabis industry is really going to take off. And as me and Steve were talking amongst ourselves during the break, that it's nice now that it's not just about the smoking and the recreational, although that's got a part to play, but we're getting chance now to find out all the other bits that this plant plays with its fuel and its building materials, with its fibres boards, its papers, its plastics, because believe you me, this plant is absolutely amazing when you look at it in its full light. It really does seem to give us everything back, from the ecology to the ecosystem to all the things that we need. Steve, please tell you away again. Right, where was we? Where was we up to? We were talking about the house. Oh, sorry, I just want to add, when I went to those houses in Bree, by the way, the thing that impressed me most is they really did look identical from the outside. And I didn't actually know then which ones were the hemp house and which one were the brick house, because that was a long time ago and I wasn't educated enough. Yeah. But I just felt intrinsically better in the hemp house.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah. I can connect that to another story, in as much as we're talking about other hemp building projects and examples of what's been done. And when we come to residential type homes of a similar sort of size to the ones that were in Haverhill, the BRE itself has its own innovation park, they call it, in Watford, where they've got a whole dozens of different types of technology and buildings and to test them and examine them. And there was about 7 new buildings built a few years ago, and one of those was a small little easily replicatable residential house that could be either made as a semi-detached house or a detached or as a terrace. And this house was quite small compared to all the other glamorous houses that were there being exhibited on this open day. And it was a very hot day in the middle of the summer, and many of these houses had very high-tech sort of climate controls in them, and heat exchangers and coolers and all that sort of stuff. But the hemp house didn't need any of that, and most of the people that were at the show wanted to be in the hemp house, and they were all trying to cram in there because it was the only comfortable building on the whole site. So, this is an example of this atmosphere, this climate control element, and this has been used to preserve the wonderful works of other ingenious people who, hopefully some of the hemp activists will go down in history as being people that helped to develop technology and change things. And those artifacts of great inventors that invented the penny farthing or the early bicycles or early vehicles, or even the written works of Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein, are now also being protected and preserved with hempcrete. British Museum stores a lot, or British Science Museum, stores a lot of its artifacts and relics in old aircraft hangars in an old aerodrome. And of course, this is hardly the best environment to be storing things, especially if they're made from metal or paper or other more delicate materials. And so their solution has been to build these hempcrete boxes or a hempcrete building inside the steel hangars, which means that they can store these things in a perfect condition.
Wow.
This is all part of the way that the material itself is being used in all sorts of ingenious ways to do wonderful things. This information was given to us by Mark Patton at the last International Hemp Building Symposium in Wales at the CAT Centre, the Centre for Alternative Technology, and the Welsh Institute for Sustainable Education Centre there, which is made from hempcrete. There's a big lecture hall there that's made from hempcrete, and there's an accommodation block where we all stayed, most of us stayed, during the event. We had people from all over the world there. And that's all part of my activities as the International Hemp Building Association.
I would like to say as well, if anybody's never been to CAT who's interested in environmental buildings, it is the most staggering place to go to because it has everything from whiskey barrel, well, you can tell me something, whiskey barrel, ram out, they have all these amazing houses built from non-commercial, I don't know what the word is, but sort of more natural and more sustainable buildings.
Yeah, well, it is the Centre for Alternative Technology, and it's, there are lots of alternative ways of building there. There's all sorts of examples, both from like copies of particular kinds of house, like the Walter Siegel house, which is basically built from just basic materials you can buy from a building store, and very, very simple in an attempt to try and reduce the cost of building back in the 40s and 50s. But there's also straw bale buildings there, which show that compared to straw bale, hempcrete is way better. And there's this big building that they've built out of hempcrete. Now, there are aspects of the detailing of the design that I might criticise, but as a material, as a sort of ambient feeling inside the buildings where you stayed, it was very pleasant indeed. But we held our symposium there anyway, and as I say, that's all part of the work of the association, which I sort of direct.
On the hemp bale, or on the straw bale ones, me and a guy called Derek Bilberry from Hemp Union years ago at the Green Gathering, we tried to build a hemp bale house, but unfortunately we ran out of hemp bales.
Well, that has been done in Canada. A couple of different places. That has been done in Canada, where there's also a lot of hemp building going on. Even though they don't have a large supply of industrial hemp yet, there is a large new factory being built in Canada to process just the fibre rather than the seed. The seed is mainly processed by Hemp Oil Canada and Sean Crew and his gang. But that's mainly for the oil, but they don't really produce much straw, so there's another facility being set up in Alberta.
So Steve, can I ask something? Right, being a sort of hemp person, and I've grown hemp and stuff, if I grow the plant, can I still take the fibre to use as fibre as for, like, say, making material, and just use the hurd and the shive for the building material? Or is that just some sort of like crazy hippie fantasy that I can get two things from the plant from the same plant?
You can get three things from the plant and the environmental benefits as well, as they do in many places in the world, especially in smaller processing facilities in France, for instance, and in Sweden. The thing is that there are basically a model for building a big hemp factory like the one that's recently closed in Hemp Technologies, and the ones and several of the ones in France. And there are other more low-tech versions of that. Some of them are old machinery that's maybe come from Eastern Europe or even from Northern Ireland originally before that. And other machinery would be things that farmers have cobbled together themselves. And there are other machines that are being developed by people like me and others in the world where we're trying to develop machinery so that we can actually harvest and process at the same time.
Yeah.
But the thing is that whatever you've got depends on where you're going to go with the markets and what materials you're going to produce. Now, if you've got a massive big factory, it's mainly about just producing bulk materials where you're just smashing the straw to bits, getting the wood chips out of it, and having a sort of basically a matted sort of fibre that you then either sort of tear apart and make into biocomposites or whatever, or you separate in some way to try and make, you know, some form of textiles. And the textiles is a hugely complex industry, and of course China and possibly India in the future control that. And it's very high tech, and you have to harvest the materials specifically for textiles, and that usually involves a lot of labour-intense work at the moment because we don't have all the machinery, and of course that ends up in places like India or China.
Well, when we done the crop in Beeston Farm in 2001. We actually used an old Romanian hemp breaker, which was about 100 years old, to break it down. And we actually got the straw off or the fibre off by retching it in the field. And then we literally put it over that nail bed and strung it out. And we had a lady called Pauline came down from the Yarnard Trust, and she spun it on a big old hemp loom.
Lovely.
And then we had in the field as well, we had a thing called a sari loom, which is a sort of hand-portable loom. And we made up about 2 metres of cloth from the field, and we'd used a building material which Ralph Carpenter was down. He made us a couple of big hemp bricks from it. So, and we actually got some seed off it as well. So we did really triple crop it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're definitely showing the potential there, and there is all those potentials, and there is potentials for the fibres to be used in bigger industries like biocomposites, which is massive at the moment, as an attempt to replace metals and steels and aluminiums in plane parts and car parts and train parts. So those sort of things are definitely happening. But again, those markets are massive potentially. Of course, they'll start off as niche markets for particular products like car parts at the moment. Mercedes use several panels like that in their cars, and several other positions of hemp is used in Mercedes as well for soundproofing and that sort of thing. Yeah. But the textile thing, as I say, it needs more work doing on development of the processing and of that sort of equipment. And the reason to do that is that process you talked about called retting.
Yes.
Which is a very unreliable method of treating a crop. It's something that, when we have very stable climates, we might be able to guarantee a little bit more than when we've got the sort of climate changes that we've got going on at the moment, at least the variability of climate. And so we need to really avoid the retting if we can, which is what the green decortication drive is all about, what people like myself and my partner here in Ireland, Terry Barman, have been working on for many years, and a few other people in the world as well. And
I believe there's one in New Zealand now, a green decorticator.
No, that I met the fellow who bought that. I was involved with the people who developed that machine right in the very beginning, and they're basically, I think it's mainly made by a man who's sort of could be considered to be deluded, and is just insistent that this particular idea he's got of how rollers and stuff should work is just going to work, and hasn't really handled the reality of working in a field. Anyway, the fellow that bought that machine, it broke after about a week, and at the moment the only processing is done through stationary machinery.
Yes.
And it's usually quite big old machinery or big new machinery.
Well, it might be delusional, but maybe somebody will come along. Maybe somebody's working on one out there somewhere. I'm sure it's not that. I'm sure it's not that too far away.
Very near to having it done, but it, like all these things, it's like going into the dragon's den. You need money to do these things, but is it just going to be money from somebody who doesn't care and who just wants to push you out of the way, or whatever it is? And when you have a passion for something and you know that it's not really ready yet, not to really commercialise, and even then, it's very difficult to patent things these days. A lot of people think they should be all open source, but when you put a lot of time and effort and resources and maybe other people's money into things, it's not so easy to just give away things for nothing unless that's...
Well, I definitely believe in patenting machinery, patenting seeds, especially cannabis seeds. It's not quite my cup of tea, but there you go.
Patenting machinery is what I was going to say is basically impossible anyway. So the only way you can really go about it and protect the investment and the work you put into it, and at the same time provide benefit for the planet, is to produce a machine for your own use, produce materials with it, and then when you've earned money from doing that, you might be in a position to then manufacture them in a larger scale. But the really thing is to prove something, then it's going to be valuable, then people are prepared to pay for it. If it's just an idea and they think they can improve on it, then they're going to steal it.
Absolutely. That's the way the world works. Steve, right, so the million-dollar question is, can I basically grow my own house?
Yeah, it takes about between a hectare and a half to grow a medium-sized house, let's say. If you were talking about a terraced house, a hectare would do easily. If we say we get roughly 6 tons of material off a hectare, you might get a bit less than that if you're just talking about the herbs. It all depends on the fertility of your soil. People talk about 10 tons a hectare stuff, which is quite unrealistic unless you're growing on a...
Well, actually, I'm guilty of that. I've always put that around 10 ton. I think Ralph told me that. I'm blaming Ralph. Mr. Carpenter, you got your figures wrong. But in theory, okay, so even if it's 5, I just grow 2 fields. Because isn't the equation I want about 10 ton of mass for a sort of 2 up, 2 down equation?
Yeah, I'd say you'd probably get away with less if it was that size. If it was like a 2 up, 2 down type house, then I'd say you get away with about probably 10 tons would do you. Probably about 8 tons even. I mean, a lorry load is 12 tons, and I've never used a whole lorry load on one house.
Well, there you go then. So roughly 2 hectares of land will give me enough to build me a reasonable sized dwelling with a bit left over.
Hemp on the floors, the walls, the roof, everything.
Wow. That flooring bit. Okay, right, yeah, we've got time for that one. Couple of minutes before we go to the next bit. Can you use it as a flooring?
You can, but only in a situation where you presumably be barefoot. I'm talking about purely like a plastered hempcrete floor. But you can create a hempcrete subfloor, which is warm and insulating, which you then put either a timber floor on top of or a tiled floor, something like terracotta tiles on top. Yeah. So then that will support the weight of that easily. It's not like it's just that as a surface, it's not very hard wearing unless you sort of plaster it with a sort of plaster on top, and then leave that to set properly, and then don't be wearing stiletto heels on it, basically. For
sure, because I went to a place you might know about it. It was a school. I can't remember where it was now, but it was a special needs school. And a lot of their clients there, the children, were sort of blind or deaf, and they really loved it because the walls were so tactile.
Right.
And that was one of the benefits that they understood after they built it, not before they built it. It was just one of those add-on bonuses. Yeah. And also it didn't echo. Yeah. Which is very important for children that have some disabilities.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason, another way you can use it, and that's in recording studios. I'm waiting for some band or musician to get in contact with me saying he wants to make it in the studio, because I can make the perfect sound. We
got Cypress Hill. Where's the Bob Marley Foundation? Come on, guys.
Well, if only Bob Marley had known about it.
I'm sure he did, but he was too busy puffing. He thought that was enough job for one life. Oh, bless. It's fantastic stuff, isn't it? I still pick your book up and flip through it and just dribble, really, to be honest with you. And my dream is, as somebody that's been in this industry for a long time, if I ever do make any money, and I ever do get to retire, it's got to be a hemp house. There's nothing else would do. Even if it's a
retirement home for old.
Oh, please go there. Just dream it. What a fantastic! Of course, it would work because not just the funny side of it. It's an ecological building and all these benefits. Keeping when you get old, your temperature, you can't control your temperature so much, and when you're sick, because I always do this in the show. Sorry, I'm post liver cancer, and during my treatment thing, I couldn't hold my body temperature. Right. So again, that a sort of house that held its temperature a bit more than a concrete or a hospital would be so much more beneficial.
It would be, absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of minutes left on there. So more benefits.
More benefits, right. Well, more benefits. When it comes to benefits other than just the health of living in it, or the health provided to the planet, or the additional health provided to the planet by the growing of the hemp materials, there's the building of the actual building and the health of the workers building on the building site. Now, lime can be quite caustic if you don't protect yourself from it, but there are ways, there are spray applications these days, there are all sorts of methods of applying the material into the building. But it's quite an easy material to protect yourself against, and there's not any real toxins. There's no chemicals or nasty solvents or anything like that are going to affect you, and there's no particulates that are going to affect you, like fibres, like fiberglass or asbestos or anything like that.
Exactly. I remember watching that little blip about Kevin MacLeod. Kevin MacLeod, by the way, for the people that don't know about him, he does a building show in the UK, which I believe is networked pretty much worldwide now. And he's built, I'm sure Steve can tell you more about this after the break, but he's made a little sort of a state of hemp houses, affordable eco houses. During that film, one of the things that really impressed me, he was looking around and he said it's the cleanest building site and the safest building site he's ever been on, because it's just guys with shovels and barrows and tampering things, you know.
That's right, yeah.
Which is again an important, because the building industry, I believe, is still one of the most dangerous industries that we have. You know, a lot of people get injured or die on building sites, even with all the great safety regulations in place.
Yeah, definitely,
yeah. So the worst that can come to you on a hemp building site is maybe falling in a vat of hemp. And that they will raise you as a statue in the village. Here is the hemp builder that died in the hemp vat.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow. Can you carve with it?
Can you what?
Carve.
Well,
has anybody carved with it yet?
I'm sure you could make sculptures with it, either by moulding it as a material or by carving it with very sharp tools. It depends. To make something with fine details in it, say that's sort of like an old-fashioned carving, you'd want to use the very fine particles of hemp. Then you'd get a much more uniform material, which would be easier to carve without large bits pulling on smaller bits.
Right. On that note, we're going to go to the next break, and then we come back for the last bit. Fantastic. Okay. Hello.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Have you ever had a problem with overcooking your cannabis oil? You probably wanted to rip your hair out when you burned off all the THC, right? I even cried one time when my brownies failed to make a good impression at the party. Well, I stopped crying when I found Magical Butter. Magical Butter is a device with a microprocessor controlled program sequencer. It was designed by a scientist and a chemist to precisely extract the benefits of various herbs. Magical Butter easily makes botanical butter, oils, tinctures, lotions, sauces, and more. Magical Butter heats your oil and your herbs at the perfect temperature every time. Check us out at magicalbutter.com because it's magical. Okay, there's a lot of science and chemistry involved, but it sure works like magic.
If you are in the Portland, Oregon area and are an OMMP card holder, then come down to Nikki's Diggity Dank Market, Portland, Oregon's first and only weekly OMMP market, presented by the Alternative Wellness Center, located at 5241 Southeast 72nd Avenue, 2 blocks south of Foster Boulevard, close to public transportation, held every Sunday 10 a.m. till 7 p.m., connecting quality vendors with patients. Nikki's Diggity Dank Market also has a weekly raffle with products from every vendor. So come down to Nikki's Diggity Dank Market and have fun while connecting with quality vendors and getting great natural medicine. If you are a vendor and want a chance to connect with OMMP patients, you can check out their Facebook page at facebook.com/Alternative Wellness Center or call 971-888-4392. Be sure to register early because space is limited. Nikki's Diggity Dank Market.
I don't know about you, but when I cultivate my clones, I want to give each and every one the best chance to grow into a mature, healthy plant. But after a few cloning cycles, I experienced decreased root density, slimy stems, or even worse, no roots at all. Growers know that reusing cloning collars results in failed clones. And cleaning cloning collars between grow cycles requires extra work and decreases root density. That's why I use PermaClone. Permaclone collars have been engineered to prevent failed clones by providing heat sterilizable collars, which fit easy clone, turbo clone, or power cloner systems. Permaclone collars can be dry heat sterilized, pressure cooked, or autoclaved to completely kill all bacteria and fungi without harsh chemicals. Start cloning with confidence today and visit us at permaclone.com. Put in the code T for hemp with your order and receive a 10% discount on your purchase.
Headshot Canada. Based in Saskatchewan, Canada, it is shaking up the medical cannabis industry. Headshot Canada helps Canadian citizens in getting a medical marijuana license. They do this by filling out the paperwork. They also help explain your needs to your doctor and also help find the right strain for your condition. For this service, Headshot Canada charges a nominal fee of $100 and your participation in a research and development study to test the effectiveness of different cannabis strains on various medical conditions. Owner and founding farmer Tim Selinsky wants every Canadian to know that you have the universal right to a marijuana license. Unlike Compassion Clubs, Headshot Canada's goal is to get the right strain of cannabis for the ailment at a fair flat rate price for the patient no matter the strain. Headshot Canada offers 57 strains of cannabis grown at family-owned farms in Saskatchewan as opposed to Canadian federal government's one strain of irradiated garbage grown in a lab. Go to headshopcanada.com.
Free? Did you say free? Free hemp? Free hemp? Free hemp video and audio? Free downloads of all the top artists, all the pot artists on planet Earth. Interviews with all the people making the movement, making the hemp movement. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp.
Weed, cannabis, cannabis will save the planet with cannabis. Cannabis, cannabis is very good indeed. A miracle to life. Say goodbye to trouble and strife.
Now for the last section of the show, and I've got to give my shout out to my favourite, beautiful, lovely charity, the Hemp Works charity, UK.org. A big shout out goes out to Tony Macaroni, who's down there in Twickenham, outside the newspaper stand, because he wrote our fabulous cannabis song, and I know he'll be dancing around in the street tonight, telling everybody about it. A big thanks going back out again to the Veg Fest. We had a wonderful weekend, and a slightly negative acknowledgement to the bank that we use, who shall have no name today, for the charity, has decided that we can't have an account with them because we're dealing in drugs or something stupid. We're a charity that's recognised by the Charity Commission, and all we do is give out good quality information about the medicine that can be used from this plant, and it is all peer reviewed and it is all scientific. They're not urban myths that we give out, and we actually have patients out of time who come to our shows who will testify that they've had end stage problems or they are suffering from multiple sclerosis and God knows what other things, and they will testify to you to your face how this plant helps them. So thank you, bank. And if it is true, I'm going to get every potted in the country to withdraw their money from your bank account. Thank you. That's my bitch for the day. Right, sorry about that, Steve. All right, off we go. So, right, last part of the show. Any big shout-outs you want to give to people while we're here?
Pardon?
Any big shout-outs? Any people you want to mention while we've on the last part of the show? Any shows coming up?
I've just been at the conference in Germany, and all the hempsters, all the heads that are there that I've been meeting for years and years and years of basically the people I'd give a shout out to on this program. I don't know who else is listening, anybody that I've met in all my many courses around the world, Australia, Finland, Sweden, Canada and America. But we were talking about the Triangle, that project that Kevin MacLeod, who does a Grand program that's very popular in not only Britain but especially in Australia these days. And he built, about 41 or 42 units. Most of them were terraced houses in 3 rows around a triangular site, which just so happens to be a triangular piece of land that he bought. He built these houses primarily with the view of bringing community together and to keep the cars around the back and to have a sort of child-friendly space in the middle and have community gardens and that sort of thing. And when it came to actually investing his own money in those buildings, he chose hempcrete, a product that he never featured on his shows before, but that he'd seen at his Grand Design shows and was very impressed by. So they built the places. They had absolutely no problem with the use of hempcrete in the building. The people that live in those buildings say they're the most comfortable houses they've ever lived in. And if you actually look at pictures of them, it looks like just rows of houses with what looks like chimneys on the roof. But those are not actually chimneys. Those are actually cooling and passive ventilation vents. So it's very unusual to be building houses in Britain that might need to be cooled rather than heated.
I think you actually better repeat that.
Well, the thing is that on his show, Kevin McLeod didn't really make a big deal about the hemp. It was just about the whole project in general. There was a movie made by 2 girls called Bringing It Home, who I invited over to my symposium in Granada because they were desperate to come and interview people and they didn't have any money, so they came over and interviewed a load of people at our symposium and then went on to interview a lot of other people that I gave them introductions to. And they bought this movie called Bringing It Home, which is a wonderful movie about the reasons for legalizing hemp, especially as regards building, but also touches on clothing and various other things. But in there, they actually got an interview with Kevin McLeod specifically for their movie, and he there talks about the hemp in greater detail, so that's well worth watching. I'm there saying a few sort of rebellious things as well. But those events, like my hemp building courses or the symposiums, do bring a whole load of people together, and I'll be doing another hemp building course in Colorado in the beginning of September, in the 6th, 7th, and 8th in Colorado, in a place called Bellevue, just up outside Fort Collins. And we're going to be focusing on the fireproof nature of the building, as the house was burnt down during the forest fires they had there a couple of years ago, which actually were occurring during my hemp building course in Wisconsin. And there was a fellow there from Colorado who was doing the course, and he was getting phone calls from his friends saying their houses were burning down, and there he was learning how to maybe prevent that in the future. So he's now holding his own hemp building course, which I'm coming to teach, and we're going to be showing how not only can we build hempy houses, but we'll be building them in the middle of a burnt-out forest, and showing how that we can prevent that disaster happening again.
Wow. So how do people get hold of you, Steve? What's your website?
My website is hempbuilding.com, and then there's also the association website, which is internationalhempbuilding.org.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm out there doing all sorts of things, teaching, consulting, helping people build houses in various different parts of the world. Hopefully we'll be starting some projects up in Namibia and Malawi, where I'm already helping a fellow in South Africa. And so there's all sorts of things happening. But I also do a more entertaining thing, which maybe somehow we'll do something as a sort of maybe in connection with Time for Hemp, where I do my stand-up info shows. And I'm bringing out a book shortly to go in conjunction with this, and it's basically called Hemp Can't Save the Planet, but It Might Save Humanity. Wow. There are a lot of people around who make that claim that hemp can save the planet, or indeed that humanity can save the planet. Of course, the last thing the planet needs is us saving it. We just really need to save ourselves or go away, because the planet will do very well without us.
Exactly.
So we need to get real about preserving our wonderful lifestyle that we value so much, and maybe improving it and getting rid of the bits we don't like. And those need to be done with tools, and we need tools to do that, and one of the best tools we got is hemp, as we know, and you know from your program, it has these incredible uses. But I'm bringing a whole load of other little views and angles on these whole issues to show why, and to show some of the history of how we've developed these commodities that we use, and how we can have a different approach with hemp to just about everything from clothing to religion.
Yes, because isn't it funny that it's one subject that can go across the complete board, from the seed to the religion and everything in between.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And again, it's one of the things that we're pretty much 24/7 on Time for Hemp Network, going around the globe with various shows. And it's amazing that we can have completely new content on each show every day. We're not even repeating ourselves. Yeah. What other subject could that possibly, what could be another subject?
There
that
are
we could
very
add
few
that's going?
materials or any tools that we got that are that big. I mean, maybe you could talk about the uses of a computer and all the amazing things with the internet and all the rest of it goes. But I mean, most people are probably all aware of that anyway, and they might be unaware of sociological impacts or whatever. But it's as an actual issue. The fact that it's been prohibited, the fact that it is so incredibly useful, the fact that we have used it for so long, and the fact that the more you look into it, the more you realise it was such a basic element of our civilization and society. It was such a basic trading item, whether it was textiles or whether it was the seed or whether it was the oil or whatever it was, that it was a thing that people trusted, that people knew that they could buy that and they could sell it on, that they could produce that, they could store it in their houses or their warehouses or whatever, and that they could know that had value in the future, both for individuals and the community.
Especially about the legality. Steve, you're in Ireland, aren't you, I believe?
Yeah. Yep.
And what's the legal situation for the hemp over there at the moment? Is there any good hemp projects going on?
Well, I have my partner have grown several hemp crops over the years as research projects. We've never really had a problem in that way. The license is issued here by, funnily enough, the Department of Health and Children, would you believe it? Which is because it's still classified as a drug. The European Union legislation or regulations that allow for the growing of hemp are administered by this department because it's basically the same license as you would apply for if you wanted to open up a factory making cocaine or heroin.
But the thing is as well, Steve, you're a good builder. Have you ever built from cocaine?
Yeah.
Can you build from cocaine?
It's not so much the building, but just the growing. So we've never had a problem with any of the farmers that have been growing for us in getting a license. The only time there was a slight problem was when there was this young couple who wanted to grow a few acres, and one of them's father was a local politician, and the other one's father was a local head constable, chief constable, and so they conspired between them as parents to set up their offspring by sending a cop to visit the field and being very sort of doubtful about it, and I don't know about this, and we might have to bring in the big forces about this. We can't have this sort of thing going on. Just as a joke, Yeah. And the only other problem we had, which was with another farm, which was an organic and biodynamic farm that had a lot of woofers on it, and it was before the many people from Eastern Europe were coming in through the European Union agreement, and so there was a lot of people there who were woofing, who were from Eastern Europe and various other places, and the police were more interested in whether these people had work permits or not than whether they were quite okay about whatever field they were going to go hemp in. That was all approved by the government as far as they're concerned. It was fine. It was just, are these people working illegally? So we've never had a problem with that sort of thing. The department have always been very flexible. They've always been great with us about maybe late applications for licenses. There are, as far as I know, another group of people who are looking into establishing hemp production, and they have been growing trial crops in the last few years here in Ireland, up in a more northerly area than me. But the thing about Ireland, as with a lot of other smaller countries, is it's finding the investment and knowing that the markets are there to get into a big-scale production, and so it needs to be smaller-scale production. And at the moment, the building thing in Ireland has been severely damaged by the bank crisis. Yes. And any campaign you can do to give the banks a lesson, I would fully support from your previous statement. But the thing is that the economy isn't supporting the growth of much at the moment, although there is lots of academic interest in what we're doing, as there is in just about every country in the world. And just today, I've had phone calls from people in Brazil. I've had email messages from people in Haiti, from literally all over the world. It is busier than it's been for a while, you could say, in the whole thing. But it's just mainly because I think that the whole world is now generally understanding the kind of problems of climate change and energy shortages and resource shortages, and the fact that we live on a finite planet. And they are realizing that we do have to find solutions, and so they're out there looking for the solutions now. And hempcrete, when it comes to building, is a pretty good solution.
Absolutely, hemp all round. Really, I feel it, and it is our time for hemp, isn't it? All the things that all us activists have been talking about for years in our particular field, as now seems to be coming to fruition. They're starting to listen to all the things that we've been well, at times I felt like I'm a madman, you know, some of the things that I've...
Well, it's definitely our time in that way, for sure. It'd be the beginning of another time. But
Steve, 2-3 questions. If you was growing in the UK or Ireland and you had your choice of seed, not necessarily on the seed cultivar list of the European one, which is quite small now, what seed would you grow? What would be your particular number one seed?
You would have to grow what was on the list, and there are a few...
Yeah, no, let's just take that away for a minute. I want to know which seeds you would want in a world...
to be quite honest, it all depends on where you are and what you're growing it for.
England for
seed, then you obviously want a seed variety. If you're growing for fibres and stuff, then it depends on what kind of fibres you want. It depends on what your client...
I want it for England, and I want it for building.
Well,
any seeds one?
The best variety that I personally have experience of was Felina, which is one of the French varieties. But there are new varieties being developed all over the place at the moment, and some of them have shown great hope. But I'm not going to start talking about them until they're all sort of like absolutely proved, and some of them I'm hoping I might get distribution rights to. So.
Great stuff. So right, just for today's conference then, if I'm growing in England next year and I want to grow for base material, for building material, coming from the great Steve Allin, you'd recommend me the French variety of Felina, yeah?
The Felina, yeah.
Okay, that's fair play. Until obviously such times change of where maybe a new seed comes out, which is more...
Well, there are loads of seeds. I mean, there are loads of ones that we wouldn't be able to name because they've just got numbers on them that are still being sort of trialled, but they're all on the list because you can be growing them for research or for breeding purposes as well, you see.
Yeah. I've grown several different varieties in the UK, and I've got a couple of favourites, to be honest. But that's another one.
The one I was least favourite, I think, was the one called Fedora. It was just too late developing, and it never really, it needed more nutrition, it seemed, than others. The other ones we've grown is that Polish variety that begins with a B. I can never remember it. Bibiowski or Briskowski.
The unpronounceable B one.
Yeah, exactly. That was fairly good. It wasn't as high yielding, but it grew fairly well, and it had nice fibres on it if you're interested in the textile industry. But again, there's been very little experience of actually producing hemp for textiles in the UK because that's not what we've been doing. Hemp have just been just using it for biomass, and the fibre was for the automotive industry if they could get it into there. And the wood chips was either for bedding or for herd, so there wasn't really any green clean specification. They were just looking for yields really, and they tried Uzo and a whole load of other ones. I'm not sure which one.
Again, I don't know whether you know it. Back in the day, one of the best hemp textile fabrics and intelligence was at Mackie Internationals in Belfast.
Golden Mackie before it closed,
You know it, Golden Mackie.
They just released the Hemp Mac machine.
Yeah, which was a real shame.
It was a very strange factory because it was on what they call the Peace Line on the Springdale Road, which is actually right in the middle of the Falls Road and the Shankill. Yeah, which is really crazy when you've lived in Ireland as long as I have, and I wasn't so at all aware of Irish history before I came here, and then you come here and you realise that England's got a whole load of stuff that it doesn't tell you about, and then you go up the north and you realise that the horrible, scarred, divided community that's up there, and the real mess that it was certainly. And we were up there actually during the peace process when they were meeting at Hillsborough Castle with Bill Clinton and Tony Blair and all the rest of it, and Ian Paisley and Jerry Adams and the rest of it, and we were actually growing hemp around the back garden in the research institute there. So we used to get waves through the security cordons, and it's the hemp guys again, in you come.
Yeah. So really, you was actually growing the solutions to quite a big problem.
Exactly.
If they'd taken time to get out the window
and set fire to it, we might have got peace a lot quicker.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so it was a shame about Gordon Mackey. That's a bit of history that needs reviving because Gordon Mackey and his family knew an awful lot about hemp textiles.
Well, Gordon Mackey is still alive as far as I know.
Yeah.
But he is involved in the jute industry a bit still, and the hemp industry a bit, but I think he's getting on a bit, and I'd say he's near to retiring. He doesn't need to do that sort of thing. But I was also involved with another member of the Mackey family who was his cousin, I think, a man called Desmond Metcalfe, and his brother before him, Colin Metcalfe, who were really would have really loved to have been able to preserve the flax industry in some way by turning to hemp, but we just didn't have the resources, and we were just too early in the game. Really, it was if we'd been doing it now, and we still had all the resources of the flax industry up there, we would have been able to do it, but it was too much of a gap.
Yes, resources have always been a problem in our industry. Well, the financial resources have always been a a bit of a problem, haven't they?
Yeah.
Listen, we're coming down to the last minute, so all I can say, Steve, if you're ever down in the Hastings way, come and drop in and have a cup of tea with us, and so we can talk lots and lots of hemp to our heart's content. I do hope to make it onto one of your building courses at some point, because I do have some plans for myself, and I really do want to grow and build my own house.
Well, I think that will be late in September in Ireland.
That's fantastic. We're looking to grow 12 hectares next year down in Dorset. We've got the land and we've got the licensing thing and we've got some money. So obviously at some point next year, I'd like to invite you down there to possibly do a workshop.
Well, that's a centre of old hemp production in the old days. Because Gundys was, and Gundys that made all the fishing nets and even the socket of hemp.
We've gone home to the homeland.
I've got cousins down that way, yeah.
Oh, well, you'd be well at home then. Look, Steve, thanks for coming on at so short notice. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Anytime, any news, let us know. We get you back on. And as I say, if you want some advertising, contact Casper. He's got some very interesting advertising packages. Or if you just want to keep it in the UK on the advertising, I can put you up on my site. In fact, I think I'll put you... If you send us a banner link, I think we put you up there anyway, because I love what you do.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much, Steve.
You're welcome. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Casper. Thanks, the world. Thanks, everybody.